What up, everybody, and welcome back to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Well, what blade are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about a budget blade. We're going to talk about a Bestech product, the Bestech Scimitar. Now, Bestech is a new brand for me. It is a fairly new brand on the market. This is one of these, I believe, that Bestech is probably an OEM manufacturer, meaning they make products for other brands. And you know, that includes American brands. If you see an American brand, a lot of times in knives, what you'll see is an American firearms manufacturer wants to do a line of knives with their name on it. Well, they aren't set up to manufacture knives. So they go to somebody else. That somebody else is an OEM manufacturer. Sometimes they'll be in the United States for a higher end product. Sometimes they'll be in Asia for a little less expensive product. That's what we have here, I believe, with Bestech. And Bestech has come to the market this year, is how long I've been aware of them. And they are making some waves. They have done some high-end titanium frame lock knives that are around the $200 price point, that very, very competitive $200 price point. And then they're doing a line of G10 liner lock models, of which this is a part. And these are generally, what I've seen, in the $52 to $55 price point in the United States. And they're being carried by trusted retailers. One of the ones that I use a lot is Blade HQ. They carry these knives. So feel free to go over to bladehq.com and check these out. But I'm sure that Knife Center and a lot of other online retailers are selling them. Like I said, this model is called the Scimitar. The model number is BG05B-1. And we will take a look very quickly at their packaging. It's pretty simple packaging. It's just a single end opening box. There's no internal tray or anything. The box is a quality box. It has the sort of waxy type of feel to it. And then you can see the Bestech is in a gloss metallic chrome type of print here. We've got some color print on it. Bestech's information on this side for their website. On the end, you see that we have Scimitar, D2, Stonewash, and Satin, and we'll get to that later. And then on the other end, we have the item number, which I've already given you. The only other thing included is this fancy protective plastic bag right here. And thank God it's there. So, you know what? This is the first Bestech that I've had in hand. I'm going to say I'm pretty impressed at this $52 price point, and we will get into all that in a little later in the review. Let's go ahead, do some specs, knock these numbers out. I've added a couple of things to my specs, which I'll note as I read down through the list here. The blade length, 3 3/4 inch or 9.5 centimeters. Blade stock thickness, 138 thousandths of an inch or 3.52 millimeters. The blade width is 920 thousandths of an inch or 23.36 millimeters. The handle length, 4 5/8 inch or 12 centimeters. Handle thickness, 540 thousandths of an inch or 13.72 millimeters. The handle width at the widest point at the pivot end is 1.14 inches or 29.09 millimeters. And then the closed width. Now the closed width, don't let this mislead you. The closed width, because I'm measuring this way right here, including the flipper tab, is 1.44 inches or 36.67 millimeters. But if you look, the overall width of the knife closed is the same as open, because the blade totally nests within that the width of that handle. All right, The overall length, you're around 8.5 inches, give or take, or 21.5 centimeters. The stop pin diameter is 134 thousandths of an inch, or 3.42 millimeters. Behind the edge, I checked it in 4 different points, and I got an average of 20 thousandths thickness behind the edge. A new spec that I'm adding is handle to blade ratio, and for this model is 0.756. That is on the upper end of pretty decent. As you go closer to a flat 1 on this, you are getting closer to an equal length blade to handle. Now in a folder, of course you're going to lose whatever length right here to the center of your pivot, and then you're going to lose whatever length on the other end with the blade, how it nests to the end of the handle. So 0.756 is pretty good. And then the weight is 4.27 ounces, or 121 grams. All right. You know what? That weight's not too bad, guys. 4 1/3 ounces at 3 3/4 inch blade. That's not too bad. Now, what we've got here in this Scimitar model is basically, of course, you can tell from the name Scimitar, they're going after the blade profile of a scimitar, which is an Indo-Persian design. In the United States, we refer to it as a trailing point. The point rises up. It's basically a sort of a Persian type design, and hence you get that scimitar name. Now, let's go into materials first. For the blade steel, across this series with Bestech, they are doing this in D2, which is a semi-stainless tool steel. Now, a little bit about D2. It's old. It's old, guys. We're talking about a World War II era tool steel. This steel has been around all over the world for decades. Okay? It is a well-respected tool steel. It is well-respected within the knife community, and it has some very good characteristics. Now, it is not a new ultra high-tech alloyed steel. We are talking about World War II era steel, and the steel industry worldwide has learned a lot about alloy and steel since then. So overall, it's a pretty basic tool steel compared to some of the more modern steels. It is a high carbon. You're looking at 1.5 to 1.6% carbon. A high chromium for a tool steel, hence it being semi-stainless. Typically in D2, you'll see the chromium about 11.5 to 12%, and that is missing a stainless designation by about 1%. In this steel, as long as the heat treat and temper is good on it, you'll typically see it around the 59, 60, maybe 61 Rockwell range. At that range, you get good wear resistance, which is your edge retention. You get good toughness, which is, resistance to breaking and chipping, as long as it's not hardened too high. But one thing about D2, a lot of people do not like D2. I don't understand why. I've never had bad luck out of D2, but one characteristic of D2, it will take a wicked edge. You can sharpen D2 to such a sharp edge. You can make it scary sharp, and it will hold that edge fairly well. It has good wear resistance. Now, in the handle, and this is going to cover all of these G10 models from Bestech. You're in a machine G10. It is very well done. It is radially machined, 3D machined. Very clean machine work on it, very good looking. I love the lines in it. You're over a steel liner that is nested, Okay, and you can see on that face side here that that liner is weight relieved. They are nested on both sides. The lock side is not weight relieved per se. Now it's got what's cut out for the lock mechanism. It is a liner lock. Your small hardware is all in stainless. It does feature stainless standoffs, and they are concave machine standoffs, so they're not just a straight boring standoff. You do have a deep carry pocket clip, and unfortunately, because of the design of this, it is right hand tip up only. It is not changeable for left hand carry. And one of the reasons is you can see there is a pocket milled for that pocket clip, and you can see this bend in this pocket clip. There's absolutely no way you could put this to the other side without changing the pocket clip, really. A lot like the pocket clips you get in cold steel folders, where they send you a second pocket clip for that left-hand carry, because, you know, when you change over to sides, you're changing the direction of the radius of the handle design. All right, this knife is on a ball bearing pivot. It feels like steel bearings to me. I did not take this apart, and I didn't research this. It feels like single row steel bearings to me, the feel of the action. Let's see what else we have here. I think that's about it for materials. I mean, D2, G10, stainless steel hardware, stainless steel pocket clip. Yeah, that's it for materials. Let's go into fit and finish. I'm pretty impressed with the fit and finish on this knife. I'm going to compare this. I don't have one on hand. I apologize for that. But I'm going to compare it, for those of you that have hands-on experience, to the to WE knives G10 models. And I'm going to say that this knife is 99 point some small percentage comparable to those models, at half the price. The WE knife models are going around the $100 to $115 price point, and I think in that there is just it's a feelable increase in refinement over this knife. But I will say this is a very, very well made, very refined, very smooth knife at the $52 price point. The blade, as far as the fit and finish on the blade, let's look at this. It is in a flat grind. It's a very high flat grind. It is not a full flat grind, but it is very high, so it is fairly thin behind the edge. You know, the grinds are even on it. You can see the plunge here is even on it. I don't see any issues in this fuller here on either side. Then you've got a swedge that's ground through the center section of the blade like this. You know, to me, that is a little busy. I could have done without the fuller and just had the swedge, or I mean, that's just personal opinion. Doesn't have anything to do with fit and finish. But it's just a little busy to me up here with the fuller and the swedge, although all are ground pretty doggone well. It is a trailing point. It does have a long length of flat edge here, a narrow, tight radius belly here going up towards the point. So it is a sort of unique for this design trailing point blade profile. Of course, you have a very sharp pointy tip, as you do on almost all trailing points. You know, to me, it's a good looking blade profile. It is as ground satin on your primary grind and your swedge grind. The flat and the fuller here are stone washed. Let's get up and see if you can see. You can see that the flat here at the ricasso and the fuller are both stone washed, and then the spine, the flat of the spine, is also stone washed. Very attractive, pretty subtle. I'm very happy to see this in this combination satin and stonewash finish rather than a coated blade. Although I do believe Bestech does some blade coating. You do have a length of jimping here. Let's get that jimping up here pretty close. It is flat top jimping. It is fairly soft on the edges. It's a very short section. I would have liked to have seen a longer section of a little more sharper jimping. I'm going to say this is towards the lower end of effectiveness as jimping. I think it is more useful as this slight thumb ramp coming out of this sort of dished area in the handle profile. Now, going into the fit and finish of the handle, we're going to take a slow look, as long as we can stay in focus, around the edge of this handle. You can see the machining is very clean. The G10, I believe, was left. You can see some texture in here, left as machined to give it a little texture, and it might have a very light bead blast after that. It's a sort of a soft, finely textured, premium sort of feel for G10. And then, of course, you've got the character of the G10 as it is radially machined. You can see the rings almost like tree rings, wood growth rings that comes out of G10 when it is radially machined. It's very attractive to me. That adds to me, it adds a lot of character without throwing a lot of anodization or fancy markings or just anything that you might think would be overboard on the knife. You've got a custom pivot, and I suppose that is a B. I think that the pivot is attractive. I did adjust the pivot on this knife a little bit to see how it affected the centering. No issue there. It does feel like this face side of the pivot is captured. I didn't have any issue with it turning. It is a single side adjustment pivot and just a plain machine finished on this side. And then this side is stone washed, and then the high part is machined off to a satin, and that just replicates the finish on the blade. It's very attractive. And then the rest of your hardware is the polished stainless look, including the pocket clip, which is polished. Now, the pocket clip, I like it. I like it, guys. I typically I prefer a pocket clip that once the tip comes up, that it has a flat section. I feel that on a lot of pocket clips with just a tip up, that will dig into the palm of your hand. But with this knife, I can feel that, but it is not an irritant. It might be an irritant under extended hard use, depending on the size of your hand and how you grip the knife. Now, the handle length at almost 5 inches, you've got plenty of real estate there to grip this knife. You can see in my medium-sized hands, I've got plenty of real estate, no issue there. It is a fairly narrow handle profile, so people with smaller hands are not going to have an issue with that narrow profile, along with the right at half-inch thickness. Makes for a very comfortable, a very universal sort of handle feel for different hand sizes. And of course, with nearly a 5-inch handle length, people with large size hands are going to have no issue either. The handle profile is organic. It feels organic in your hand. It fits the way your hand holds a knife. You can see I've got a finger choil here. I've got a concave area here for the rest of my fingers. The butt end of the knife drops down And that's the way things fit in your hand in this grip. It's very comfortable in a reverse grip with a fantastic flat on the back. In a draw grip, I don't know that I would use this knife a lot in a draw grip, but this, the flipper tab extension here that works as part of your choil. Under a regular grip, it's not too intrusive at all here on the webbing between my thumb and first finger, so I think it could be used in the draw grip. I think it's a fairly neutral handle. Again, it's you know, it's organic. It gives you this dip here, it gives you this drop here, your recess for your fingers here, a decent choil here. I don't feel like under normal use that I'm going to slide up on the blade in a piercing movement. I don't feel like I'm going to lose my grip off the back of the blade. I think it's a good looking, well thought out handle design. You have a lanyard hole here. You're going to have to go through both sides. There is no tube for the lanyard. But you know, that's not a big deal for me. I only have like 2 knives that have lanyards on them. But for those that want, you know, you've got a good sized lanyard hole. No issue getting 550 cord through there, whether it is D-cord or not. So no issue there. Now, I see no issue at all in the fit and finish with any aspect of this knife. The next thing is the action. It is on a bearing pivot. Like I said, it feels like single row steel bearings to me. And by that I mean I can feel the bearings rolling. Sometimes that has to do with the bearings. Sometimes it has to do with the surface that they're riding on. I do not know if this knife has an insert that those bearings ride on. Since it does have full stainless liners, I'm assuming that is your insert right there. It is very smooth, guys. It is, you know, it's smooth. The opening is crisp. The closing is smooth. The detent is perfect for this design. As you can see here, you have a mechanically efficient flipper tab design. You see through the center line of the knife how that flipper tab is oriented forward. That is going to multiply the amount of force that you put against it, rather than that flipper tab being straight up. That is a good design aspect, and it has just a perfect combination of a firm detent and good flipper tab design. The lockup is early. You can see here you are about the width of the liner lock tab as far as your lockup. Let's say that's 30%. Let's call it 30%, just looking at it through the camera here. There is no play in any direction, none. It is a very firm stainless steel liner lock lockup. No issues there. And then we can check our centering. The centering out of the box is perfect. And like I said, I messed with the pivot just a little bit, and the knife is machined so well around this pivot end that loosening or tightening the pivot barely moved the centering. It barely moved it. It was just fractions off of center, and that is always a good sign, guys. Overall, you know, honestly, there's not a lot of competition from American companies and an American-made product at the $52 price point. Really, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that is doing a bearing pivot flipper folder in a quality steel in D2 with a very high end of fit and finish. I cannot think of any American-made product from an American company at that price point. And that is the reason we are seeing these Chinese companies come on like gangbusters. The days of cheap Chinese knives are gone, for the most part. I mean, that cheap crap is still out there because there's people that buy that stuff. So as long as people buy it, it's going to be there. But for those of us in the knife community, knife enthusiasts, we are seeing these new brands with a new product at an accessible price point, but at a very refined level of fit and finish with better materials. It's hard to argue at $52 with D2 tool steel, G10, a solid, very solid lockup, perfect centering, great action. It's hard to argue with that, guys. And you know what? Bestech has got a good reputation so far. I've not heard anybody say anything bad about them. They are not coming to the market with sort of derivative product. They're bringing their own designs. So that avoids that pitfall that a lot of Chinese companies initially have. The quality is very high. From what I've seen, many of their new models have been well received, both the design and the quality. I look forward to seeing what this company does. They have done very well so far. This knife, I really like this knife. I love trailing point knives. Persian type inspirations, as long as they don't go too far and they're not sort of campy or overdone, which this is not. I especially love the handle design on this. Like I say, the fit and finish is great, the price point is great, and I can, without any reluctance at all, I can recommend these Bestech knives from what I've seen so far. Alright guys, well, once again, I thank you for taking the time to watch one of my videos. Thank you to all my subs, every one of you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.